Yesu Guru Dema Siddhi Om Aum Beza Guru Dema Don Denza Samayanza Siddhi Om Aum Beza Guru Bema Don Denza Samayanza Siddhi Om Aum Beza Guru Bema Don Denza Samayanza Siddhi Om Aum Beza Guru Bema Don Denza Samayanza Siddhi Om Aum Beza Guru Bema Don Denza Samayanza Siddhi Om Swasti. I wanted to say a few things and introduce you, His Holiness Kanchen Jingmi Phunso Rinpoche. When such an occasion as this occurs, it is the tradition to speak of the magnificent occasion in five folds. And first, we speak about the magnificent place. Magnificent place here is Boulder, Colorado. And Boulder, Colorado is a magnificent place because it has been blessed by His Holiness Gawakamapa and also blessed by His Holiness Kyabgi Khyentse Rinpoche and also blessed by Vijayadhara Chojam Trungpa Rinpoche. It is fully blessed, therefore it is a magnificent place. It is a magnificent time. It is magnificent time of the first time that we all have got together and have such a extended seminar of Nganjur Nyingmawa for the first time in this country. And it is a magnificent teacher, such as His Holiness Khenchen Jigme Phuntsol Rinpoche, to visit here from Tibet. And Rinpoche is well known, and not just well known, a fully accomplished master of Dzogchen lineage. Rinpoche also is a treasure revealer, and treasure revealers are fully true embodiment of a Padmakara. And we have the honor of Rinpoche's presence here. And it is a magnificent retinue, such as Venerable Khenchen Jigme Rinpoche and Venerable Jatu Rinpoche and Sangye Khandro Rinpoche and all of us. And in this occasion, I have requested Rinpoche to turn the wheel of the Dharma on Dzogchen Ati Yoga, on the nature of mind, possibly if Rinpoche gives in a grant, pointing out instructions to all of us. So this occasion marks the time of our generation, marks the time of our life. So I would like to conclude here, and I would like to proceed with the mandala offerings and the requesting to turn the wheel of the Dharma, and Rinpoche will turn the wheel of the Dharma.
Oya, terang kapsa ngecek sangma lanjut dan zombie ni kemdana kang langwar siawan ta sanji ki chu ajib samda de kirong kacham dordi zamsi jo.
On this auspicious occasion that we've all had a chance to gather here together, I shall give a brief introduction to the doctrine of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni.
Tani darjak tomba tamkila tiji chembo dan bandanya de nibi tondo kanza do mingombor yeni sanji zanna yang nangtla kara tangmit samji ngor shangchim shangde semche pari.
Our soul guide and Lord teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, from the point of view of definitive truth, was primordially realized as the primordial Buddha Kunduzambo. But from the point of view of apparent phenomena, it took him 3 countless aeons of time to awaken the bodhicitta.
Deni karchin tramit sam the tsuksagni. Tar jagar durjev danda zapap chigni laftenu ngombar zokbar san jibare.
After accumulating merit for 3 countless aeons of time, finally, in Bodh Gaya, India, after going through the 12 miraculous deeds as one of those deeds, he showed the miracle of his own realization, full Buddhahood.
Zapap chigni jinang nija. Khzur chivano, dirkya la panbar fiava. Chujin korlo rambaksam korba terid.
However, of the 12 deeds, the most important deed was his turning of the wheel of Dharma for the sake of taming the minds of sentient beings.
Deni chujin korlo rambaksam korba teya. Tangono katango demba vi chujin korlo ji takba tonmong wadang den dravi chuzuk sonde.
In that he turned the wheel of Dharma on 3 auspicious occasions. At the first turning of the wheel, the principal subject was that of the 4 Noble Truths, which was expounded for the sake of the common pursuit.
Denina takba chenbu tonmong mayin bichu warwa sanyin me bichu jin korlo tang. Denju tama lakbar number fievi chujin korlo te. Chujin korlo rambaksam dirfia yongrak la corneri. The warwam sanyin me bichu jin korlo.
Seni mepa, lasa, teni, sumpa.
Samba lakbar number fievi chujin korlo.
Tisana, lakbar namba shepi, namba yewa.
Number Eva, Shiva.
Lasa. On the second turning of the wheel, the teachings of the Mahayana, the greater spiritual pursuit, were given on the uncommon levels. And this was concerning introducing the vehicle without characteristics, without implications. And the third turning of the wheel of Dharma was concerning opening the different doors of teachings.
Daily young Dirhya Shukti Kirva Namlano Hadang, Hladang, Novjenda, Mir Lasok Banams, Sang Durji Chuji, Kurloyan, Chirkwa Kurvari.
Then, for the sake of taming the minds of beings who are on the supreme level of sensibility, the Buddha introduced the secret mantra teachings into the God's realms, the Naga realm, the Nirchen realm, and also the human realm.
Deni takba mamba chutam chen yantu wotong chembodan kurgawo la asbi khdan bikhtar din namji ramjinda tarjang jinza wala ge kyon kunde khabr bari.
As for the vehicle of the lesser pursuit, the Hinayana teachings that were introduced, because they were maintained by the Buddha's principal disciples, such as Kungawa and so forth, they have gradually been passed on down the lines as they do exist intact in our world today.
Takchin tanmog chunamno zabanam jakhar yangi gavd fibada. Yachivanam shambam gombu gavdam zada jikting kamde tar bari. Zaban jakhwaraya. Yachiva fiamba.
Zopa. Lasa. And concerning the teachings of the common vehicle, the pith or profound teachings were propagated primarily by Manjushri, and the extensive doctrines by Maitreya.
Deni tanmong mayin baksang durji takbichuno riksum gombu hidang.
As for the uncommon vehicle of secret mantra, this is propagated by the 3 great protectors, and in particular, Vajrapani, Sangwe Dakpo.
Deni yan shuk jalla sakbi jagram phakpa yertayo sanji ki tamba nyima karvarta yen rangu warta taru hibari.
And also because of the efforts of the 6 ornaments and the 8 supreme ones, the Buddhist doctrine spread in the land of India like the rising of the sun, the rays of the sun.
Deni jumdandi rangi ki long tamba janda jumdandi tamba dan fiang de tarwen jero ji long tamba tang yang na jumdandi rangi ka kong dini lu gadna kong li lakbi ke pamam joni ji shawa ji fiang ka janda shombar jero ji long tambi dilawa ba janda jongwarit.
And then also, according to the prophecies of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni himself, predicting that the doctrine would spread from the north to the north, and not only that, at the time of his passing, his own prophecy that 8 years after he passed, one even greater than himself would be reborn with the name Padmasambhava. So it was, and he predicted that Padmasambhava would spread the teachings in the northern land of the snows.
Teni ngasham sorchi dorji gam urjin pammam joni ji shaba tena dia chanji jan kam sa sanji nawan thaida ru podalar ngombo shani zigda dorji dan de nyami tebi wang xsam kyksam dak chiktu dibi dak ni chanji.
So our guru, the lake-born Vajra Padmasambhava, in the Buddha field of Dewa Chen, is Amitabha, the incarnation of Amitabha, who is in the Buddha field of Dewa Chen, is the incarnation of Avalokiteshvara from the Buddha field of Riwo Potala, and from the Pure Land of Dorje Den is the incarnation of Tekpe Wangpo, and is the condensed incarnation of these three. Excuse me, of these three, yes.
Teni kono saksam nan randa dam tarwa sanji ki tambala fiya ja chimbur fipa marung bi datang tamtun nam daru fipa la chuktu ngak bi chewe chimbo jide.
And also, in that he is unrivaled as an incarnation, he is also unrivaled in his ability to tame the minds of unruly, barbaric-like sentient beings possessed by demonic forces who would come in the future. So he has this particular specialty.
Kongono tang woyirtana odutun tamtru marungwa tamchat tamaptagana teni sanji ki tamba taru shipin garchin mali ba tamchakya saru shibari.
So therefore, when he first came to the snow land of Tibet, initially he subjugated those demonic forces and negative harm doers, binding them to the oath of protecting the doctrine, and then after that he began to spread the doctrine of the Buddha very extensively.
Di jizana kanchin fiangchip senpa fiona na khzu mdu tamba teyana tarjan jibir shibari. Kanchin mdu do.
And then after this, Kenshin Bodhisattva, Shantarakshita, came, and he was able to propagate Lord Buddha's teachings on the Sutra doctrine very extensively.
Teni jagar ki yirni jang panchuda chimbo mbamala matrada sanjik samala sabbi panchuda jef subject jang woyir tak dan chawari.
And then after that, from India, the great Pandit Vimala Mitra was invited, Sangye Sangwa and 108 great Pandits to come into Tibet.
Teni wochi yang na biru zanadang kawa karsak chugruhli jamsan la sabbi lozawa jef subject jagar dan jagar taf zangana teni jagar ki chu Jigsotsuk mali ba tamjata vodka kat subjecti gerwari vodka gerwari.
Lasso. Berotsana tani.
Berotsana kawa qarsak. Chogro li jamsan.
Chorong.
Chogro.
Lasso. And then the three well-known Tibetans, Berotsana, Kawa Pakset, Chorong, Louis Geltsen, they went to India to learn the Sanskrit language and to learn the Dharma in its entirety, and then they completely translated that into the Tibetan language. So therefore, even the Dharma was able to be propagated into Tibet in such a way that it hadn't even been propagated in India. Dershik nangwan tayi sam jenda give here in the treva George pandam kara ze is the shondi George adka. And then later, as the incarnation of the Buddha Nawatai Amitabha, the great Pandita Georgi Atisha came to Tibet to spread the doctrine.
Kongo ndrabi kachaz dalang nyonre taju shatan Kongo kachaz glan der tarfiadre.
Now I will say something about him.
Kongla na jagran phagbi yerta chirtar tari chu mali pada jayang urjin khandu lada novjan da traza la sabbi yer gana khandu manam ji jang nam ki kan nigla mangutana sanji ki chu da ngir ji girte ram jemla mishi ba mednya barta chu manguzu da kongsa nyonga sonre
Georgi
adiki yagar giyar the chu yotsap poda. Yang kanju lang kanju man nam gana alagom ma nam ki kam ftana na. San ji tan bi chu yon zok tan mi shibak chi kyam me nya bartawi kong tigilla tirta tonri.
Georgi Pandit Atisha, all of the Dharma that existed, concerning his qualities, all of the Dharma that existed in the great land of India, he fully realized, and not only that, he also met with the Dakinis from the land of Orkney, the space-goers, and received from them all of the profound teachings without exception. And so he was this kind of a precious incarnate being, possessing all of the teachings.
Then Congo no Sami Yaki to the Tiondi de Sami now would be Yaki, Jagger Preacher of Tiondi, Congo no Sang Nakalagam Namgana, Jachev Yaman, if Jachak Yamashis, Sang Jirti de Lam Tayot Manda, then he can shoot Buddha, Sanji Tamba Target, something Jagger Tarmamions Sunday.
Lassa, it's Sami Nana, Pejata, Zikri. Lassa. And however, in that he was this kind of amazing incarnate with this amazing knowledge, even then when he visited Samye Monastery and he looked at the volumes on the secret mantra, although he thought that everything that was available to be learned had been made available to him in India, he realized that only 10% of it was what he had been able to learn, and that the secret mantra was 90% more vast than he himself had ever realized.
Tarta warrior na yopi kartan chu yorzo niga sangyami jirdi mankoni arja che sangyami jirdi ten tak tan me persam ji me chabare sonde
Orgenpa. And also another great Pandit, Drupchen Mahasiddha Orgenpa, who came to Gyagarne.
Wudna tansang kartan chu tamba samgya hodri the jirdi myang konala tagmatsat kasond ngan chu dar yodi jirdi mang winar kom shok sakba parwochi karzang myang changwa di tokap kona yangna tarta wod ka tan chu ni ga matsat kasond ngan chu dar yedo
the page girne re
Kartanchu nigana tarta pod samgya hodri. Sang na urjin buji tazo tarji sang girdi myang kona de piptan tamba samgi masat kasond.
So this great Mahasiddha Orgenpa, although there are some 300 volumes of the Kangyur and Tengyur of Lord Buddha's teachings and their commentaries, when he was translating just the titles of the secret mantra texts that existed in Tibet at that time, there were far more titles alone than there were even volumes of the other scriptures.
Dinana di jisa dela sang ngayir razin de anchokana origin boche dana kanlo lasuk bikidis jirbi chu tamjala ngayir razin ngayir nyangma ba.
And so the original translations that occurred then, due to the kindness of Guru Orgyen Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, and so forth, and the Dakini, these are all part of what we call the Ngagyur Nyingma, or the earlier translation school, these original translations of the teachings.
Dela jisana sarkya badam, kargyat badam, deni kardam ba, kardam telak sarnyang niwande, kardam nyangma jojiri, jima wo lobsang chakbari, kardam sarnyang.
Following the earlier translation school, at the significant point in history, there began the later translation schools of the Sakya, the Kargyu, and the Kadampa, within which context you have the Nyingma Kadampa lineage held by Georgi Atisha, and the Sarma, or later school Kadampa, which was headed up by Lobsang Trokpa Songkhapa. And thereby, when all of this came to pass, we then had what is now commonly referred to as the 8 great chariots of the teachings existing in Tibet.
Kona bat Sangmaya, Tikip Yondan some of Tana, Sangmaya, Origin Buju, Tagdagi.
Now, if you really think about it, in terms of these great masters, they are all none other than actual incarnations of Guru Rinpoche.
Sarkia Vino, Sarkia Pantidi, Namtardam, Origin Buju, Lontan Nana, Con Origin Buju, Train, the Songe.
For instance, Sakya Pandit, in his own autobiography and also in the predictions of Guru Rinpoche, he is an incarnation of Guru Rinpoche.
The Nip Garkit Piwan, the Finayan, Yamit Tahojimbu, Con Origin Buju, Train, the Con Songe.
Gampapa?
Dagbo, Dog John, Gargitba.
Dakbo. And for instance, in Kargyu, the great Dakbo is also an incarnation, according to prophecy, of Guru Padmasambhava, Organ Rinpoche.
Then Gardam Biwan the Fina, Adukadam, Lobsan Tabak, Nicheriana, Organ Buju, Train Zin, Konabani, Nantarmana Saruchadonde.
And in the Kadampa tradition, both Atisha and Losang Trokpa, according to their own autobiographies, are incarnations of Organ Rinpoche.
Then Jonang Valab Samoptana, Jonang Turu Vadam, Taranataji, Yonsu Tabi, Kipachimbo, Konaba Nikayana, Origin Buju Train, the Konabani Songe.
And in the Jonang, the Kargi Jonang tradition, the great Durura and Taranata, according to their own biographies, are also both incarnations of Organ Rinpoche.
Then Adiki Kadam Pachu Zegizone, Tinana, Wonder, Tango, Tanba Targanjono, Varter Giberfiano, Tama Yenang Vardo Niberkepi, standing here, Yodo Chotamja, Origin Buju Train, the Adaka Congressman.
And also, Atisha himself said that, according to his tradition, Kadampa Palcha?
Gardampa Adha. Gardam Pachu, Pachu, Vichu, Pachu, and another one. Pachu, Vichu.
Palchu Sena?
Abba, Ver.
So, according to his oral tradition of ancestral tradition, he taught that in the beginning, those who propagated his teachings in Tibet, and in the interim as they spread ever so extensively, and even finally, those main lineage holders were all incarnations, would all be incarnations of Organ Rinpoche.
Then Organ Rinpoche, Rani Kijana, Kongla, Tapa Yopa Tetan, Sanjik Tambani Bangera, Konga Tapa Mix, so the Shepikans made news on it, they didn't on it, Sanjik Tamba Nuki in Jison.
Lasso. And even Organ Rinpoche himself taught that anyone who has faith in me and has some perseverance or diligence, then the doctrine of the Buddha from that point of faith will just continue to increase and spread forth.
Then Taton or Muniku Samoptana, where to Shonbi, Tanzan Chevich with some Matijak.
So in terms of this kind of an explanation and understanding, all of the great upholders of the doctrine of Tibet are really all the same, have the same purpose.
Haras Tarnanga Samoptana, Origin Bochida, Kanchin Bond Sato Mama Madra, Kong Dawo Chokjana, Courage on the 7 Mari.
But when you look at it, and you look at masters such as Organ Rinpoche, Kanchan Bodhisattva, and Bimala Mitra, it is hard to find anyone who can equal the enlightened activities that they set forth in Tibet.
Pantra Konda Ocean Mamoni Masal, Kadjir Loza Vadeon, Konabi Kidina Shon and Dresden, Danin Shon Marjizo.
And so, since it's hard to find any great scholars, pundits, realized beings such as they were, even later in terms of translators, it was very, very hard, difficult to find any who can equal them.
Deni Mamyon Sirte on Jisa, Taloptak Maralogis Kidi Tabari, Titas or Mulu Chembos exhibition yonder. I'm not Lord and Sheriff.
Northern Sheriff. Ngak.
Or no.
Marpa Lotsawa.
Maralogis, Kedang Kidi, Timium.
Listen. At the time of the life of the great Marpa Lotsawa, living simultaneously at the same time, there was one Ngak Norden
ong lorden shirap
Sherab.
tipshon na titisana dedi na finger ga lozawa sami na nanga atang odi kongri
Ngak Norden Sherab.
lorden shirap
Loden.
lorden shirap.
Excuse me, his name was Ngak Loden Sherab. And at this time, he was the most famed of all translators, unrivaled.
Tani Kongo work choose ga fiambam gombu sonim dorde genze gizot to work da marav gerneri jaltang gerkatanga.
Also, at that time, he was the one who translated the great Dode Gen Sutra into the Tibetan language.
Tani Kongo gerbiangir karna dorde janga kap lega chikten aranga zegi tak lok dawari. Aranga zina samjidi kada machakba. Machakba.
Di Dode Gen Nama.
Dorde jang nana.
Dundak ada di.
What kat yena machakba.
Ready to Dundak? He translated that.
This is yigis tibshaman.
Less. Dizena Yigitri. And so, in the Dode Gen, there's the passage where it says over and again, Ma Chakpa, which means be unattached. Right?
Tani Kongo to Gerdide, Lega Chik, Machakpa, they give me Gerketsavani Malagneri. Lega.
And so in one of the passages in the original Sanskrit, it was saying aranga again and again, and he was able to just translate it into Tibetan again as machakpa, which means like unattached.
Tani Kongo Jesapodilla machakpa Sigmatma Tonga Ko Amavidan, Kong Utiksone, that chili chetagana, Chimshil Malagneri.
And then he reached some point of difficulty because he couldn't think of any other word other than the same word coming again and again.
Tani Kongo Mbirozani, Nangers Gaziptis, Nanchut Kamburanga, the Hunchemburanga, Mbirozani, getting Ingers Gaziptis.
And then he examined some writing of Berotsana to make a reference for that.
Mbirozani in a drag down to Drumondi, the drag down Ririla, Aranga Ririlan, Paradushambat. Jemba Satam Zopa Sondi something here. They did long division by Mount Jemba that division. There's the cut to the Tixan you dropped about. The Tongi that you know, there's the subject of your own could go on the Zot quick to get the checks on.
And so, in looking at that writing of Berotsana to get some clarification, from the first part of the term, ara, he was able to decipher that this meant that this implied the 6 transcendental qualities: transcendental generosity, morality, patience, ceaseless effort, concentration, and knowledge, wisdom, to be applied. That these 6 transcendental qualities are transcendental throughout the 3 times.
He
was so astonished that he then composed some Dharma words based on this. The meaning of those words were that Berotsana is equal to limitless space. And that Kawapakset and Chouluri Gyaltsen were like the sun and the moon. They were mentioned earlier. And that the other translators, all of the other translators, are likened to the fireflies that fly in the space. Something like this. It was putting them down.
Then,
so if you only look at his qualities in terms of being a translator, it is something quite sublime.
Then, Pantala Samloptana, Origin Buchedam, Bamala Majanikayana, Snarni Tati Water, Killer Dirkit Mepan, Origin Buchen, don't bring out Trembulana, Tartayam Jigo, Trembunam la Chukin Corlo Corgon. Bamamajana, Tartayam Jila, Jan Gru, Sirganana, Chukin Corlo Col Jigodri.
And that the two great Pandits, Organ Rinpoche and Bimala Mitra, have been inseparable from then until now. Even though, in one sense, we know that Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, at present remains in the southwest continent of the cannibals, and that Bimala Mitra actually remains now on the 5-peak mountain of Wu Tai-shen, Gyanak Riwu Tsenga.
Then, original Buchedam, Bamamajadam, Kambum Boda Sadu Namga Jisan Jigna Tamjalan, or Nyamabaji on the Tranary.
Now it is Organ Rinpoche, Bimala Mitra, and Khenchen Bodhisattva, Shantarakshita, who are the 3 famed masters responsible for the establishment of the Nyingma doctrine in Tibet.
Nyangma Chutenum Dorkit Shedam, Dorkit Chatsang was in Yamsilim by Orchid, or Nyangma Koni Chachudi.
And in terms of the Dharma of the Nyingmapa, it is specifically meant to be the complete practice of Sutra and Tantra.
Oh, yeah, Jen talks Arma Balas, but Tamchel Lavana. Dorji Chatsam was in Yamsilan Yamayu. Then Yama Koni Chachu, ain of some Gitawazia, Kitrikiri.
Now, perhaps then, in hearing that, it gives you some cause for doubt. You might think, does that mean then, I've said that perhaps it is that the later translation schools don't necessarily put an emphasis on learning all of the Sutra and Tantra, and that it is only the Nyingma school that does?
They are in the money. Tarta, Woodna, Captain, Poto, Samkia Woodney. Samkia would Samayam, Hanganger Kitis of Generema, Hanganger Kitis of Markira, Shinger Kiloza, Tamjaka, around to Pujanaga, along Chikia the money.
No, not really, because actually those 300 volumes that exist now in the Kangir, which are practiced by all schools, they existed at the time of the earlier translation. There's not a single volume that came later. They all came from the time of the earlier translation.
Deni, Jan Tamchekin Jana, Chumango on the Chaperta, Riata, Dorjit Fiedam, Chaperta, Narjit Yoga, some Yamsil Tila, Yamabazet.
Now, that should suffice for the the external sort of understanding of the Sutra and Tantra approach. But specifically, there is a strong focus placed on the 3 inner Tantras.
Tina, Kenaba, Nichutok, Yamavichukore. Ah, Tai, not teach that Jagans and Tabgoni, Jimam, Dorjit Fiedam, Narjit Yogasam, Yamsilimba. Nani just Zopachim Yamsilim Batter, Yamavi, Sanyitzina, Yamavi Munzanto, the most God.
I asked if this is a Nyingma Dharma Center. The answer is yes. Therefore, it's important that all of you bear in mind that from the external point of view, your approach should be the ascertainment of the sutras and tantras in general, that internally the 3 yogas, and that specifically the pinnacle of the path should be focused on, which is the Dzogpa Chenpo, the great perfection.
They young kiri yazizgi. Dorjit Samla Norva Mepa. Then young Makoni Chachuma, Yala Mates it Gondi. Don't know Dorjit Sanglam, Dorjit Kat Sangva, Manurva. Then young Lansilan and young Makoni Chunman, Yala Kat Sangval and Yamsilan.
And that it is the Nyingma approach, and specific to the Nyingma, that the Sutra and Tantra are unmistakably sort of studied and understood in an unmistaken and complete sense. And this is a specific approach of the Nyingma, which is unrivaled by any other.
Dani Rijan Sarkia Karjit Las of Shutter Gentam Chella, a lamit Kijitila, Pargit Margit Zere, Yamsilan Martomana, Maha, Anna, Adazegi, There's tabi narji yoga some say get 7 yodmari.
Also, now in terms of the later translation schools of Sakya, Kargyu, and so forth, what is understood as the inner tantras is referred to as the unsurpassed, Anuttara Yoga Tantra, in context of which there is the father and mother Yoga Tantra. But there is no mention at all, the understanding of Maha, Anu, and Ati Yoga is non-existent.
Then take some ganani. Ta rang nyuk nyurt sanji command perchepa at the yoga kuna the yamsileno, ta yamavari.
And of these three, for those who want the swiftest approach to realization, then this is none other than the practice of the Ati Yoga, Great Perfection School, and this is specific to only the Nyingmapa.
Then Yangma with Zuba Chemuchu the Teana. Tango Targan Jogna the warrior the Tomat. As
for how the Dzogchen doctrine was originally propagated in the land of Tibet, it was only due to the kindness of Organ Rinpoche and Bimala Mitra. After, it was also due to the kindness of the omniscient Longchenpa and the great Rongzom Lotsawa. Who again were able to uplift the doctrine, and after them, with the coming of the great Mipam Rinpoche and Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, the same thing occurred, the uplifting and the spreading forth of the Dzogchen doctrine. Therefore, the propagation of the Dzogchen Dharma does fall into these 3 time spans of previous, interim, and present.
Ngadar kitisa origin pochi zogba chembo telana or zogchen sarmagam khten yushiq ziyon se tagnere.
And then also before, at the time of Organ Rinpoche, the Dzogchen also was introduced in the 2 categories of the direct utterance lineage and then the terma.
Dendum bama metichu telana yachiradam. Tintu Kama, Nyangmazi on the Tande, Yantik de Laxarian, Yangmazi, Bamamati, Yantik de Lazend. Jachi Lazend, Bamamati, Jachi Radam, Kama,
So, and Bimala Mitra introduced what is called the Gyachewa. Is there another name? The Gyachewa and the Kama lineages of Nyingma. The great extensive and the Kama lineages.
Tani Vartana, Kimchi Longshin Ramjam Gana, Ramshan, Servichata, Jechaptana, Fiadari.
And this became known as the Bima Ningtik. Then later, at the time of Longchenpa, Longchenpa was responsible for primarily revealing the aspect of sheer lucency.
So
independence upon the extremely profound 13 tantras as the principal focus, Longchenpa was responsible for revealing this aspect of the display of the radiant sheer lucency. Responsible for introducing the aspect that focuses more on the nature of emptiness. And his elaborations on this the specialty of the measure of emptiness was based on his studies of there are 23 volumes that have to do with the nature of the mind, and another 3 volumes. Longkarna Traksum.
Tani jima jang chesi wanguna zapi man kadan jisun zamicheta sonere.
And later, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo based his elaborations of the Dzogchen on what is called the Zedpe Mengak, These are the fifth essential pointing out instructions.
금친 무슨 잠수는 어질라 lokper tobi 고랑한 밭 sarchat piferdana lor kutuba jechimbuyi jechir fiadneri.
And the omniscient Mipam, in order to annihilate all the incorrect understanding and reversed understanding of the doctrine, made his elaborations based on what is called transmission and scriptural authority.
Dinana 다냥마위 조바 쳔부슈시 고나나 속은 쳔부 티 트크 지섬장하나 대제적다나고 탑고한데.
And so for those of us who are studying the doctrine of the Nyingmapa Dzogchen tradition must also have some understanding of the works of these six great masters and where they focused.
드니 조바 쳔부랑 냠슬림 발랑하나 다 get당 만약 롱급샤츠 망오시 휘접고 왔더리. 질 롱 만약 अर्जित के विचारता हूँ, लोगों के विचारता हूँ, मांग के विचारता हूँ.
And in order to practice the great perfection, there are ways of giving those teachings according to the tantras, according to the fifth essential pointing out instructions, and according to scriptural transmissions.
Today,
I will not teach in an extensive way at all in terms of explaining by way of the tantras or the scriptural transmissions. Because all of you are practitioners who have been receiving the teachings to this point and have been doing the practice and are already on a higher level of understanding, and so I will give you the teachings from the point of view of fifth essential pointing out instructions. The explanation, according to pointing out instructions, will be in terms of the base or the ground, which is that of original purity, the path, which is that of firmly cutting through, chakchit, and then after which dissolving into atomic particles. The ground is that of spontaneous presence, the path is the practice of Togel, the result is the light body.
The
first of these is for those who are lazy and who want to be liberated without effort. And the final two are for those who have some perseverance and who are able to be diligent. Now, first of all, let's begin with how one applies the view, meditation, and conduct to apparent phenomena. First of all, the view. Primarily, one must reach a definitive conclusion about the fact that all of the magical display of apparent phenomena, as we see it, is none other than the display of one's own mind. And that the mind is free from birth, free from abidance, and free from point of passage, so that its nature is none other than that of emptiness. and this is how the view concerning the nature of the mind must be ascertained. Now, in order to really be able to recognize or ascertain this view, one must receive teachings on and practice quiescence meditation and penetrative insight meditation. By practicing quiescence meditation or shamatha practice, then through efforts in meditation, one is able to understand the view. And this is in accordance with the way that the Kargyu lineage gives the teachings. Now, the principal focus of the Kargyu lineage to ascertain the view of Mahamudra is to practice abidance, movement, and intrinsic awareness, these three aspects, to discover the nature of the mind. And so this is the principal yoga focus, which leads one to the view of the Mahamudra. And not only that, in order to really practice the Kargyu doctrine, one must know the path of method, the 6 yogas of Naropa, and the path of liberation, which is the view of the Mahamudra, and the other kinds of pointing out instructions and mountain retreat instructions that are given by such great masters as Karma Chakme Rinpoche and so forth. Now, secondly, the teaching for achieving penetrative insight or vipassana. Within the view or upon the view, experiencing the meditation. Now, according to the Nyingma tradition, one searches to discover the origin, then the place of abiding, and the place of passing of the mind. And when one comes to recognize the true nature of the mind based on this type of investigation, then they reach the meditation. Then they are able to begin the meditation. These days, most Nyingma teachers begin introducing the disciples from this point of view, which is the point of view of penetrative insight or vipassana. And also these days, some of the practitioners will mingle the two points from Nyingma and Kargyu, and like a river will sort of practice them together in a mingled way. Now, the main point to encounter is the empty nature of one's mind. That's the point. From the point of view of Sutra, this is called realizing the Great Mother, the source of all Buddhas, the Prajnaparamitra. And in other terms, these are referred to as the 3 great views. The view of the middle way, the view of the Mahamudra, the view of the Dzogpa Chenpo, the great perfection, which is to realize the unborn nature of mind. And so in explaining some of the modes of the great Nyingma scholars, at this time I would like to mention something about the great Karmapa Rangjung Dorje.
Karmapa Rangjung Dorje molm genana. Tatam chatam tar sonagana gomachim boyan zirab zigot. Tatam tarvandana gomachi.
The great Karmapa said in one of his prayers that the view of the Madhyamika, or the middle way, is to be free from any limitation of mind.
Oh, zirtang tam chitam travi chagani firge chimbo yazira. Yushub tarvandana firgachi. Zirtang kan me pichaga.
Zindang.
Zunda kan me.
And that it is the view of the Mahamudra to be free from any type of grasping to any apparent phenomena.
Ndana kindi zukshin jiyang fiar ziwandi. Takba rimbar gi chutar kanan tatak yongsin dina gana zukshin yang zira zindi.
Dini kunja.
Ndana kindi zukshin jiyang fiar zindi.
Together.
Tarikita zukshin yang zira zindi. Goma zira, shakshina zira, zukshina zira.
And that these together, brought together, are the pinnacle of all 9 vehicles, which is the practice of Dzogchen. Dzogchen, the great perfection, being the very pith point of the view of the middle way and the Mahamudra.
Tapter semji chunyos tokbar shok zindi. Ta fiakchin Dzogchen goma chageda. Rang semdi chimo zginna. Tashi kiboto tezenerit zindi. Tar tokbar kirchik zikonga molam tabneri.
And so what he's saying in his prayer and his aspiration is that one must come to know the fundamental nature of the mind, the dharmata, as it is, and that in turn is to know the essence of these 3 great chempos, these 3 great views.
Teni telas tabari. Gumbani tingang dono na tokkan zinbag jen kang mfjeda mfjeda tingang mfjeda ndjo telan gumba zindi.
That's the view. Now the meditation is to remain with the view without introducing any type of discursive thought whatsoever or any grasping of any kind, to just simply remain with the nature of the view.
Teni teacher tena tar nyami tsot ko kiba da triba mangu yang tambe fiyo ne tan song nim kitub karma chmit ko song zfiat.
Now at this time, although there are many great elaborations on this point by the great Nyingma and Khargyu scholars, I would like to mention the words of the great well-known Karma Chakme Rinpoche. Turn inside and observe, apprehend one's own mind. This is what Karma Chakme said. When you observe the nature of your own mind, that which is the essential nature, is being the nature of emptiness, is the view. And encountering that empty nature and simply remaining in it in comfort and ease is the meditation. And that the Dharma, the essence of the Mahamudra, is that the nature of all meanings, be it samsara or nirvana, is contained in that, precisely in that point, is brought together in that point of simply remaining in the view. That is the meditation. Now the conduct is concerning whatever discursive thought arises, to allow it to express its own dynamic energy and recognize its nature simultaneously. Now, of all of the great pointing out instructions in the Nyingma school of expressing the tantras, I would like to mention the pith point from Karma Chakme Rinpoche's mountain retreat instructions. Whatever apparent phenomena occurs, whatever is experienced, if it is pleasing, if it is wondrous, observe it and there is a key point here for using that as one's experience for practice.
Teni stin ngamba natsa khichat yang ga mapa ngamba timo thondi telar tudan wungdon chimbo chitena yor sonji.
And similarly, on the other hand, whenever there's non-conducive circumstance and things are not in harmony, there's illness, there's disease, observing that phenomena and that experience also presents a key point for enhancing one's practice.
Teni ndorna tijenda zana, nyana, sona, dadna, ndorna nyamning ngang mabje payara, star jangjo telan shopazendi.
In brief, whether eating, sleeping, going, or staying, by observing the dynamic display of that energy, of that activity, and maintaining that as one's practice is conduct. Now, in terms of the result, it's time to mention a few words from the great Jetsun Milarepa.
Fina fiction nakina, Navi Messenchang Tang Ziwadi, Congo Nantan Zuching and Nakanaga Yakazin, Shizo the Nan Fiction and Nakanaga, Con Nani Messenchina Latam Akaziwadi.
Milarepa said that inside I am suffering from the sickness of the great perfection, and externally I'm suffering from the sickness of the Mahamudra. And in that I am sick, from this sickness, I could even die.
They choose any dinan. Rang seems Kimiti Higuan Zobachimburi. Telling Angriwa make you one of Yachimburi. Then you go Gomnana, not the you need Kapkan Pata, Tanu Jodan, Tartix, Hudel, and Yanni Passaji Comazeri, Consaji Command them near the top Yanilatam markets in it.
What was he saying? He was saying that the unborn nature of mind is the great perfection, and remaining in that unborn nature without motion, unmovingly, in terms of the meditation, never wavering from the view, is the Mahamudra, and that both of these, being experienced and being put into the application of whatever discursive thought arises, is the way by which the death occurs of the discursive thought, or in other terms, the achievement of the status of full awakening, or Buddhahood. That is an explanation of the view, meditation, and conduct according to Trekchit, cutting through. Now, in order to really put this into practical application, I shall review to you the key points of the Nyingma focus. According to the scriptural authority that I've drawn from in giving this explanation, it is in accordance with the Kargyu doctrine. And this is why, because according to the amount of time I've been given here, it's auspicious to bring these two together. Because this is because I have come from the Kargyu Center into the Nyingma Center, so this indicates the non-duality, or the joining into the union of the two. So it's auspicious. And also because it seems that all of you have been studying and training in the Kargyu doctrine for some time, and are now taking a keen interest in the uncommon doctrine of the Nyingmapa. And so due to the power of that, I have made this explanation in accordance with its need. And also generally, it is true that there is a very strong connection between the Kargyu and Nyingma in general.
Tani Narsia Pajan, the Taho Dawat Johnny, origin Buji train, but Korkija Juji order.
And also that it was taught by Guru Rinpoche himself. He predicted that his incarnation was Dakpo Dawe Shonu.
Tani Karma Pakya, Karma Kamtang Yiba Tism came to Terrari. Kong Janaka Gola Shombi Tatoyang, Naringa origin Pamam, Joringa Tipsin Sarazi, and Korkayang Korgin Buji trains, Jarjuji order.
And then Karma Pakshi, the second Karmapa, who was an incarnation of Karmapa Dusum Kempa. When he went to China, he was always proclaiming himself as the incarnation of the Mahasiddha Saraha, who was also an incarnation of Guru Rinpoche.
Then Karma Kamdak Samba Karma Tisum Kimbari. Tisum Kimbaya, Tansan Yami, Yamati Yaji Chunyam Gona, Karma Tisum Kimbi, some corner left in Goni. Konkum Honchilam Jam Lamari.
And the third Karmapa, Dusum Kempa, if one wants to, for instance, perform all of the meditations found in the Ningtik Yabshi, the famed Yabshi, then they must also rely upon his words and teachings because he was the Lama of the omniscient Longchenpa.
Then you could Karma Chamite you want Shina. Kongo Lamaya, Tarta, Nishaka Sama, Payvari, Payvi, Anamsh Major Dorjis exone, Kongo Lama Tiri, Kongo Hopma of some of Tanaya. Pay Tambans and Barisa comes out here of the exone. The Karma Chemical Hope Mari, Karma Chemical only. Ta Karjit Pa Halamin Gon and Yamava Karjit Pari. Tina Yang, Tita Soya, Dirachimbo's one the Terang Nikarian and Gazon, Shed Gorchiki Jimson.
And also the great Mahasiddha scholar Karma Chakme Rinpoche, who is very responsible as a founding father of the Peiyu tradition, which is my own tradition. He was the guru of the great Terten Migyur Dorje, who was his disciple, and also his disciple was, in fact, the founder of the Peiyu tradition, Rigzin Kunzang Sherab. And so, because Chakme Rinpoche was the guru of both of these latter two, it again indicates the strong connection between the Kargyu and Nyingma, which also indicates to you why I chose to bring out this connection here today.
Teni Kena Biamnia, Hachir Tate Samsila, your Kiresam, Karsan, Mitsojina, Jetchu, Mokodan, Tachikin Yamling, Mujungoma, Darka Chakosaya, some tea Samska to Kiresam.
So now I'm thinking that this should be suitable enough for you to be able to put into practice. And that if I speak too many words or give an extensive explanation, it might not be necessary or pertinent for all of you at this time. And I felt that this kind of briefer, concise explanation would be something that would be practical for your practice.
That's in the language at some man, Tadionji Montansia. Gatits in the Mutaki the Shina, Shimata beyond the Nibertum Tradan, the Chu Yashir, Chani Shakin, Timdri Dadan, Chutim Jimachan in the Terran Georgian.
So now secondly, in terms of the spontaneous presence, the Togel practice, then I have every aspiration and prayer that all of these practices will be able to be implemented and fully realized in this lifetime. And if by chance that doesn't happen, I also offer a prayer that you all be able to have that realization as you pass from this life. And at this point, I will end my teaching.